Hey, Britain, Pentegis here, ready to dive into the thrilling world of economic indicators. Remember when Rishi Sunak, back when he was Chancellor, proudly declared the UK the fastest growing economy in the G7? Good times, right? Except Labour seems to think they inherited the worst economy ever. So who's right? In economics, like a dodgy magic show, the truth is often a matter of perspective. Sunak's boast wasn't entirely pulled out of thin air. The UK economy did technically outperform other G7 nations in terms of GDP growth at one point. But this was after the pandemic, making for a pretty low bar to clear. It's like winning a race where everyone else got food poisoning at the starting line. Labour points to stagnant wages, soaring living costs, and a public sector on life support. Both narratives are technically correct, yet paint vastly different pictures of the UK economy. Here's the thing about economic data. It's like Play-Doh. You can mold it, shape it, and present it in a way that fits your narrative. Sunak focused on the short-term bounce back from the pandemic, highlighting the raw GDP figures. Labour, however, is taking a longer view, emphasising the underlying weaknesses that have plagued the UK economy for years. Think of it like this. Imagine you're a student who barely scrapes by in most subjects but aces a single test. You could choose to focus on that one stellar grade, right? That's essentially what Sunak did. Labour, meanwhile, is pointing out your overall academic performance, which, let's face it, needs some work. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in the middle. Yes, the UK economy did show signs of recovery, but it's been a sluggish, uneven rebound, and the underlying structural issues remain unaddressed. It's like putting a band-aid on a broken leg and calling it a day. Now, let's talk about stagnation, because nothing says economic powerhouse like an economy that's basically stuck in neutral. The UK has been grappling with near zero GDP growth for a while now, and before you start throwing around terms like technical recession, let's remember that even a small amount of growth doesn't mean everyone's suddenly rolling in dough. Here's the kicker: even when GDP does inch upwards, it doesn't necessarily translate into more money in people's pockets. That's because of this little thing called real wages. See, real wages take inflation into account. So, if your salary stays the same, but the cost of everything, from groceries to energy bills, goes up, congratulations, your real wages have actually decreased. And that's precisely what's been happening in the UK. Wages have stagnated while the cost of living has skyrocketed. It's like trying to outrun a cheetah on a treadmill. You're putting in the effort, but you're not actually getting anywhere. The squeeze on living standards when stagnant incomes bite. Now let's talk about the real-world impact of all this economic jargon, shall we? Because when incomes stagnate and the cost of living goes through the roof, it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet that suffer, it's people. Families are forced to make impossible choices between heating their homes and putting food on the table. Essential workers are relying on food banks just to get by. This isn't just about economics, it's about basic human dignity. When people are struggling to afford the bare necessities, it erodes their quality of life, their mental health, and their faith in the system. It's a recipe for social unrest and a breeding ground for populism. And let's not forget about the long-term consequences. Stagnant wages and declining living standards can have a ripple effect throughout the economy, leading to lower consumer spending, reduced investment, and, you guessed it, even slower economic growth. Glimmer of hope? Easing inflation and the promise of rate cuts. Okay, enough doom and gloom for now. Let's talk about some potential good news, shall we? Inflation, that nasty beast that's been eating away at our purchasing power, seems to be finally easing up. And with inflation cooling off, there's a chance, just a chance, that the Bank of England might start cutting interest rates. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're clutching at straws here, and you're not entirely wrong. Easing inflation doesn't magically erase years of stagnant wages and rising living costs. And even if interest rates do come down, it'll take time for those benefits to trickle down to ordinary people. But hey, let's focus on the positives, right? Even a small glimmer of hope can make a difference in these uncertain times. It's like finding a tenner in your old jeans. It might not solve all your problems, but it sure does brighten your day. public finances and the shadow of austerity. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, public finances. Labour inherited an economy that's about as stable as a Jenga tower after a few pints. Years of austerity have left public services stretched to breaking point, and the national debt is higher than a giraffe's kneecaps. This puts Labour in a tricky position. They need to get the economy growing again and address the cost of living crisis. But they're also under pressure to balance the books and avoid spooking the financial markets. It's a delicate balancing act, and there are no easy answers. Please leave your comments below. Thanks for watching. Please hit the like button and do subscribe to our channel.